Hello, hello everybody. Welcome to this streaming again. And tonight I'm streaming on two platforms at the same time. So I have the phone here and the webcam here. I need to keep an eye on both. So tonight we are gonna talk about something different. It's about the origin of time. It's a very difficult topic, and I have to say that I don't have anything prepared about this topic, because if I wait to have time to prepare something like a summary, I will never do the live. I will never have time to do it. So I'll try to brainstorm together with you on this incredibly difficult and mysterious and mind-bending topic, which is the origin of time. As I put here on the Facebook Live that is going on right now, because this is my first Instagram Live, and there is no such a thing in Instagram I saw that allows you to put the title of the live. Oh, hi Raphael, how are you? Nice to see you. Thanks for joining. Yeah, it's very interesting. And so so the topic is the origin of time. When did time start? How could it even start if the very concept of starting already requires time? So even just the title of tonight's topic is very intriguing and mind-breaking, because when did time start? Even the word when doesn't make sense, because whenever, let's say whenever, we don't have a vocabulary to describe a timeless condition. Whenever time started, there wasn't time yet. So how could it even start? How could anything start if there isn't time? Because anything to start needs time already. Has to start in a certain moment in time. So how could time itself start? And we shouldn't even use this vocabulary that I'm using, like when, did. How can I conjugate the verb using the past, like did, if there wasn't time yet? I could equally say when did time start, as well as when will time start, or when is time starting, because did, is, will, all these things apply to time. So we are talking about something that happened before time. So it doesn't even make sense. Even saying before doesn't make sense. However, our vocabulary, English grammar, as well as Italian, my native language grammar, or any other language in the world, they are all born and they have all evolved in time. We are temporal creatures. So we don't have a timeless vocabulary. We don't even have the words to describe such a thing. So I will use a compromise. I will use a kind of timeless present. So for example, like a time-independent present. For example, instead of saying when did time start, because it would imply that time started in a certain moment of time, but it doesn't work like that, because we're talking about this time beginning. I will say when does time start. So by using always the present tense, I will try to make it slightly more time independent. I would try to make the grammar, my vocabulary, slightly time independent, since we don't have a completely time independent terminology and conjugation of verbs. So that said, I hope you enjoy this topic. It's one of the most interesting in my opinion, and sorry if I not always look at the proper camera, because I have Facebook here and Instagram here, so I'm a little split between the two. I'll try to make eye contact with both of the cameras of the devices, meaning with the followers of on both the channels. So okay, so let's start. how can we even say that time started? Well, it's very simple. It's very sorry, I have to make I have to specify something. On my channels I talk about things that that belong to my profession, so either IT or health dietetics. So when it comes to those videos, what I say is my profession. So it's my professional service. It's solid, it's proven, and you can consider it pretty much definitive, unless I say otherwise. For example, research seems to be showing some hints that this mechanism works in this way, but we're not sure yet. So unless I specify, what I say in those contexts is certain. But here, this topic, this is not my field. I'm neither a pro-philosopher nor a physicist. So take everything that I'm gonna say in this video and similar videos with a grain of salt. However, I will try to tell you whenever, for the best of my ability to understand physics, whenever something that I'm about to say is, let's say, at least sure to some extent to what physics already has proven, and whenever something is pure speculation or just logical deduction or hypothesis, it will also be clear by how I word it and by the context. Okay, so that said, let's start. So when did time start? How could it even start? How can we say that time started at a certain moment? It's very simple. Now this is logical. Physics has not concluded this, but as I asked to Victor T. Toth, is a popular physicist, and he said that this very specific topic that I'm about to say right now is not within the scope of physics. It belongs more to like philosophy or things like that. But anyway, because for physics, time doesn't exist by itself. Time in physics is only studied when it's related to things. Like for example, I have this pencil and this sticky notes pad. So they are both undergoing the flow of time. Now, because they're in the same frame of reference, they have the same time. If I move this while this is staying still compared relatively to this one, literally this one that is moving is undergoing a slightly, very tiny, slightly slower time than the pencil because it's moving. That's relativity. If I was able to move these close to the speed of light, the differences in time would have become tangible, but I don't have that kind of power. So anyway, so for physics, time only makes sense when it refers to things, but not by itself. When it comes to time by itself, it's like nothing. But anyway, what I'm about to say, at least is logical. And here's the thing. If we go back in time, for example, this was caused by the processing in a factory that took pulp from trees, processed it, and made sheets, and then they applied the glue, and then they stuck them together, and then they produced this pad of sticky notes. Okay, so let's say that 5 years ago this didn't exist. However, if we go back and back and back to the origin of the universe, when even the heavier atoms didn't even exist yet, when even the atoms didn't exist, when there was only energy or whatever it was first, most probably physics said that there was energy first and then the elements started to be produced, but even if that was a mistake and it was the other way around, whatever came first. This is actually another topic. I'll try to make another video on that. Whatever came first, let's go to the very beginning. At a certain point, many physicists talk about this Big Bang, something that cannot be clearly defined. Some call it a singularity, kind of exploded. But especially recently, more and more physicists are even starting to question the concept of Big Bang. But let's not go there. First, because I'm not able, and second, because it's off topic. But whatever, we cannot say that time always existed, because that would be a contradiction, and I will show it to you right now. If we say that time always existed, okay, let's make it simpler. Let's say that this pencil has existed for 5 years. Okay? What does that mean? That 5 years ago, this pencil didn't exist. So, we can reward this. Hi everybody. We can reward this by saying that 5 years passed since this pencil started to exist. So, if we say an absurdity that this pencil has always existed, there is an exception to this being an absurdity, but again, it's off topic now. Tonight we're talking about the origin of time and when and how time started. But so that's another topic. But for everything, almost, it's an absurdity. If we say that this pencil has always existed, what we are saying is not that, for example, 5 years passed in the existence of this pencil. Let's say if this pencil was built 5 years ago, on its shoulder it would have 5 years. This pencil would be 5 years old. If we say that this pencil always existed, we would be saying that an infinite amount of time passed since this pencil started to exist, which is impossible. We would be saying that this pencil is infinitely old, which is impossible. We would be saying that this pencil has an infinite number of years, or seconds, or minutes, or whatever unit of measurement you want to use to measure time, on its shoulder, metaphorically, which is impossible. Why? For a simple reason. For 5 years to pass, 5 years need to pass. If we want to use seconds as unit of measurement of time, we would say that in order for 5 seconds to pass, 5 seconds of time have to pass. But for an infinite amount of time to pass, it means that an infinite time needs to pass first. Okay, let me make it more simple. If we say that this pencil is 5 years old, it means that 5 years have passed. If we say that this pencil has an infinite amount of time on its shoulders, we must say that an infinite amount of time passed. But here's the catch. If this pencil was 5 years old, it means that 5 years passed, or 5 years finished since it was built. If we say that this pencil was infinitely old, like it had always existed, we would be saying that an infinite amount of time finished or passed. Infinite, finished. If it's infinite, it cannot finish. Indeed, let's go toward the future instead of the past. It's the same thing. Let's go toward the future. An infinite amount of time will never pass. Let's count it. 1 second, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Imagine we were immortal. And we will be, but that's another topic. How could we ever count to infinity? Numbers never reach infinity. We can never reach an infinite number, whether it's seconds or years or millennia or centuries or whatever. We cannot say that, okay, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 998, 999, infinity. We can never reach infinity. So, since we will never reach an infinite amount of time, even if we were completely mortal, because no matter how we measure time, in seconds or in minutes or in hours or in days or in years or in centuries, we will never reach an infinite number. The numbers will always grow, 1 billion, 2 billion, 3 billion, 1 trillion, and so on, but they will never reach infinity. Why? Because numbers can never finish. We can never run out of numbers, so we can never run out of years or seconds. We can never run out of time. We can never reach an infinite amount of time in future. So if in the future we will never reach a moment when we can say, okay, now an infinite amount of time has passed, because it would mean that an infinite amount of time has finished. Infinite, finished. It's impossible. It cannot happen. Similarly, we cannot say that it has already happened in the past. We cannot say that an infinite amount of time has already passed, because if it had passed, it was finite, not infinite. So, infinite cannot finish, cannot pass, cannot be already past, cannot be already finished, because if it had finished, it wouldn't have been infinite. So, that said, if we go, as we cannot go in the future infinitely, we cannot reach infinity, it cannot have passed already an infinite amount of time. Time must necessarily have a beginning. There could be an exception, but literally, it's we will see it. It's a dialectic exception, but in reality, in the practicalities, it implies the same concept. Again, that time cannot have existed like forever, for an infinite amount of time already. So that said, we have made it clear that an infinite amount of time hasn't passed already. It cannot have passed already, so time had a beginning. So now let's go to the other questions of this life tonight. How can time have even started? I'm using two auxiliaries and a verb. Is that correct? I'm sorry, I'm not an English native speaker. How can time even have started? It's difficult to talk about these things in another language. Because the moment it started, see, it's already a contradiction. The moment it implies time, it started. It implies that there wasn't time yet. So how can a moment be? How can time start? It's a contradiction. And so, also, if we ask when did time start, it's again a contradiction. Why? It's very simple. Let's say that we have the timeline of any reference frame in the universe. Okay, let's say this is a timeline. Okay, past, present, future, or whatever we wanna, however you wanna represent it. Sorry, let me check here. Okay, on Facebook Live, if everything is going well there too. Alright, so if we ask any event when it happened, when it started, we can simply find the point in time when it started, okay? 1 year ago, 2 years ago, alright. But if we take time in its entirety, so let's say we roll it and we take it in its entirety, alright? However long it is, for however long time has existed, however long in the past time had begun. Okay, I hope I'm not messing up with English. We cannot ask when it started because we are asking about time in its entirety. So there isn't time. We cannot say that it started at this point in time because there wasn't time. And we can even say was. So I'm going to use, as I said at the beginning of the live, I'm going to use a time-independent present. There isn't time if time doesn't exist. There isn't a yet if time doesn't exist yet. So how can we answer this question? It's very difficult. And as I said, I didn't have time, speaking of which, pun unintended, and I never will, to prepare a nicely organized outline for this video. I always wanted to make this video, I never had time to prepare it. So I thought today, you know what, if I'm not gonna just do it like this, I will never do. So forgive me if I'm a little disorganized, and the topic is difficult. So how can we explain, or at least approach to an explanation, a shred of explanation for this mystery? Well, we have to give up the usual way that our minds work. We are so immersed in time that we are always used to think in temporal terms, like past, present, future, linearity of time. We are so used to it. Probably that's the thing we are most used than anything else, even than breathing. Everything is deeply rooted in our mind in a very concept of time flowing. So we need to make an effort and try to detach ourselves to that way of thinking, to try to understand this mystery, not fully because we are incapable, because we are temporal creatures, but at least by the way of analogies and metaphors that can help us to at least logically, conceptually approach an explanation, even if we cannot fully see it, because we cannot see anything that isn't temporal. We are temporal. So here's the thing. We have past, present, and future represented as analogies in these three cups. Okay, so if we say that time has started at a certain, time has a beginning, and so does the universe, because everything else, space, matter, energy, happens in time. So it is logical to conclude that time is the ultimate universal container, at least of whatever is going on in the physical universe. Because every physical phenomenon, to happen, it has to happen in time, otherwise it wouldn't be happening. So time is the ultimate container of the universe, or space-time, if we want to extend the concept, because as things need to happen in time, they also need to happen somewhere in space. Although there are hints in research that show that the universe ultimately is non-local, but that's another topic, and the conclusion still reconciles with what I'm trying to say and what I will hopefully be able to conclude. I have the concept, but I have to find the words to explain it. So space-time is the container of the universe. The very fact that there is a universe, that there is a container, even if we can never be able to reach its edges, and we never could, because even if we could travel crazily quickly and at crazy speeds, the edges would always run away from us. It's like the edge of the universe is also a singularity that doesn't make much sense in terms of space and time and locality. Even if we can never reach or try to reach a hypothetical edge of the universe, the fact that there is a universe... Okay, you know what? It's simpler if I use an analogy. Let's take an old VHS tape of an old movie. Remember in the past when movies were on tapes? Even now we can use the analogy with a DVD or with a Blu-ray disc, whatever. The tape helps a little bit our mental process because it has a linearity, like literally the frames on the tape. They flow. So let's take this tape. I don't have a tape here, but let's pretend this was a tape, a movie. Okay. So we know that in a movie the little actors impressed on the tape are not alive. They are not sentient beings because they're just printed frames on a magnetic tape. But that doesn't matter. It's just an analogy. So for the sake of our analogy and to facilitate our mental process, let's pretend they were alive. The actual actors impressed on this tape on our VHS cassette with our movie, they are literally alive and thinking and self-aware, okay? They wouldn't have free will, that's another problem, but that's off topic. So they are living their simple life of the movie, that whatever movie. I'm gonna use my favorite movie, Aliens, with Sigourney Weaver. So they are living their dramatic and nightmarish life in that little tape, okay? And that's their tiny universe, and that's their space-time. Literally, their space-time is the tape of the movie. Now, those actors will never be able to leave that tape and come out of it and meet us in person and shake our hands. They are forever trapped in that virtual tiny universe that is printed, that is impressed magnetically on the tape or optically on the DVD disc or whatever other medium. But it doesn't matter that they cannot leave the tape. The very fact that there is a tape, that there is an inside, in quotation marks, and I will explain why I say inside in quotation marks, by necessity requires that there is an outside of that tape. Why? Because otherwise that tape couldn't even exist. To manufacture that tape of that movie, there has to be an external reality where a factory took the raw materials and processed them and then pre-impressed magnetically the scenes on each frame of the tape and then processed it and blah blah blah, and then it ended up in the stores. So the very fact that there is an inside requires by necessity that there is an outside. Similarly to the very fact that there's us requires that there were our parents and that there were our grandparents before and that there were their grandparents and so on. The very fact that there is our planet requires that there was something else, which materials got assembled in shaping our planet. So in the past, I used, when I was a kid, high school, I used to think of this analogy of the tape for the movie, and I used to say, wait a moment, and it was deceiving, and I will explain why. Wait a moment, if there is an inside of the tape, there is an outside. If there is an inside of the universe, of space-time, there must be an outside. But what would that imply? It would imply, let's take again the tape of the movie. because there is an let's say that this is the movie on the tape, okay? Unfortunately, I don't have a tape here, but because there is an outside, automatically it is necessary that the entire time of the movie is already written. Past, present, and future of the tiny actors impressed on the tape are already all written. Indeed, because we live outside of the little tiny universe, the tiny space-time of that movie that is impressed on the tape, we can deliberately choose to fast forward or backward and to start looking at watching the movie at any point in the storyline of the movie. We are outside of the movie timeline, so we have the freedom to watch it at any point in time. We are not bound by the rules of its little space-time. We are not forced to follow the linearity of the time of that story, because we are beyond it. Which means that we can clearly see that its time is already written in its entirety. So if we could make a phone call to the little actors impressed in the tape of the movie, we could call them and tell them, hey guys, you think that your future hasn't come yet? You think that you are building your future, trying to save your lives against the aliens that are going to attack you, the monsters in the starship and then on that outer planet? But you are deluding yourself. I live outside of your movie. I can tell you that your future is already written. Even if I haven't watched the movie, this is important. If I had never watched that movie, the very fact that I live outside of that tape or that DVD disc, the very fact that there is an outside, even if we were all to die like this, like right now, we're all dead. Nobody is alive anymore that is able to see that or to say that. Still, there is an outside of that little timeline, that little space-time of the movie, which means automatically that the entire story of the movie is already written. So I used to think when I was a kid, if there is an inside of the universe, there is a space-time, there must necessarily be also an outside, and this was partially misleading as an analogy, but we will see why. So I used to think, wait a moment, it doesn't matter that we as human beings don't have the technology, and surely we never will, to leave the universe, literally to break through reality and leave not only this planet, this solar system, this galaxy, the observable universe, no, to leave the universe itself, to leave space-time, to leave this physical reality. It doesn't matter that we are incapable to leave it. If there is an outside, it automatically necessarily implies that the time, that our future already exists. And so our past is not gone, but still exists. Similarly to what happens with the, I'm gonna draw it since I don't have a real cassette, VHS. Similarly to what happens with the movie on the tape. The future in that movie already exists. The past still exists. So I used to think that, and I was wrong in a certain way, and I will explain. And this is the key concept. So, as we saw before in this live, time must necessarily have started at a certain point, because an infinite amount of time cannot have passed already, cannot have finished, otherwise it wouldn't be infinite. So time has started in the past at some point. But where's the misleading concept in the analogy of the tape? Even if we consider space-time as a kind of a movie tape. So why cannot we say that the past still exists and that the future already exists? It's very important. Think about it. If we take the tape and we say, hey, wait a second, the tape exists, so there is an outside. Because there is an outside, necessarily the tape's time already, this is the key word, be careful, already exists, the future of the tape, of the storyline of the movie. And the past still exists. But here's the catch, here's why this analogy is deceiving. We are talking about a completely different time. We are talking about our time, not the time of the movie. Relatively to our time, to our space-time of us, of the universe, that is not the same time of the movie on the little tape, on the little storyline recorded on the tape of the VHS cassette, if that's the correct pronunciation in English. In Italian we say cassetta, videocassetta. It's not the same time we're talking about. Yes, we can say that because there exists a reality outside of the little tape of the storyline of the movie, necessarily that time already exists entirely. The past of the movie still exists and the future of the movie already exists. Yes, that's correct, but the past of the movie still exists here, in our time, not in the time of the little actors that are living the story in the movie. They are like two different universes. The future of those little actors already exists, but already now, in this universe, not in the little virtual universe represented in the story of the movie. As the movie is going, that relatively to that time of that little virtual universe, the future doesn't exist yet. It exists already in our universe, in our time, where that movie tape resides, but not in their time. Let's represent this in a more simple way. Let's go back to our cups. So, past, present, future. We saw before in the live that time must necessarily have started at a certain point. It cannot have existed already an infinite amount of time, because it could never pass. Infinite amount of time could never finish, could never pass. So we have the past, now we are living the present, and then we will live, hopefully, the future. So this is similar to the analogy of the tape of the movie. The fact that time started, it means that there is something else that is independent by space-time that triggers the starting of time and space and the universe that came with it. That thing that triggers the beginning of time, atemporally, timelessly triggers time, is something so different from everything that we are used to and we can observe that we cannot define it, we cannot understand it, but it is something. Otherwise, time wouldn't even start. There would simply nothing would be. Nothing, just like nothing would exist. So, the very fact that time started, it means that there is something else that isn't time. similarly to the analogy of the movie on the tape, the fact that there is an outside of space-time means that the entirety of time of the universe, past, present, future, among quotation marks, very important, already exists. But already when? Not already from the point of view of our present, but already from the point of view of the eyes of an hypothetical inhabitant of that reality that isn't temporal at all and that triggers time. So let's represent this with this analogy. This is space-time, our universe, past, present, and future. And then, so this would be like, these three cups would be like the magnetic tape of the movie. It's the storyline of the movie, only instead of being a movie, it's the entire universe. It's our movie of our life, of our universe, our physical reality, the space-time in which we live, we exist, and everything else exists. Okay? Now let's get rid of this tape for a moment. Our movie. What's this? This, in my opinion, is the most interesting mystery of the universe. What's this? This, in the analogy, compared to the analogy of the tape of the movie, this, let's say, whatever holds time and space and the universe and everything in it, this represents, in our previous analogy, our reality compared to the little universe, virtual universe, printed on the tape of the movie. So we could say that the tape of the movie on the little video VHS tape where we have our movie, or let's take a DVD. It makes things simpler. All right. So, sorry. This is a movie, Blade Runner, Harrison Ford. Okay. So there is a timeline in this. There is a past, a present, and future. It's a tiny virtual universe, space and time. Okay. So this, because we live outside of this story, outside of this little universe, let me take it out. Because we live outside of this tiny universe, we can see this time, past, present, and future don't make any sense for us because we can see it all. Okay. So this time is in a relationship with our time, with our universe, in a similar way as our universe, our physical reality, our space-time, past, present, and future, is related to this big mystery. Let's call it the timeless container of time, or of space-time. Spaceless and timeless container of space-time. So, as we can say that because we live outside of this little universe of the movie or of the tape, of if we were still using tapes instead of optic discs, because we live outside of it, all of its time already exists for us. For us, not for the actors that live in this story as the story goes on and is being played by the DVD player or the VHS tape player. Okay, so for us, their future already exists and we can already touch it, as opposed to them, because in their story the future hasn't come yet, but for us it is already here, already for our time, not for them, because we are outside. Similarly, for this mysterious, timeless reality, our time, our future that isn't here yet, we are not in the year 3592, we are in 2012. So the future hasn't come yet. The future doesn't exist yet for us in our present. But for whatever that weird, timeless thing that triggers the beginning of time is, our future already exists. Because that weird thing is, Latins would say, ab extra, is beyond our space-time. Like we are beyond the space-time of this little virtual universe, virtual story. So, for this weird, timeless thing, our future already exists. But here's the catch. Here's the key to solve this mystery, this conundrum. Already. This word. Our future for us doesn't exist yet. It hasn't come yet. But for that timeless thing that holds our universe, our future already exists. But already for it that doesn't have time. Not already for us. It's misleading because our terminology is built for time. We are not timeless beings, so we don't have a terminology that is appropriate. That's why it's deceiving. So for us, really, the future doesn't exist yet. But for that thing, it exists already. Only it exists already in its weird, timeless reality. That's why I'm using this plastic container with 3 slots where I placed this question mark representing that it's a mystery that we cannot fully understand. I'm sorry, it's difficult to explain. I will try to explain in an easier way, in a simpler way. Back to the movie on the disc or the tape. Okay. In the movie story, as the life of the actors is going on, the future hasn't come yet. But the future already exists in our time that is beyond this time. Let's go to our universe. For us, now we live in the present. The past is gone. It's gone. It doesn't exist anymore. Can you take your hand and put it back in the past and touch your beloved dog that isn't anymore? No, because unfortunately, sadly, the past is gone. Is the future already here? No. Can I take my hand and grab the phone that, if I will still be alive, I will have 10 years from now? No, I cannot reach it because the future is not here yet. So the future hasn't come yet. We have our present. Okay. But for this, whatever weird, timeless thing triggered the beginning of time in our past and triggers the existence of time in every moment, because this weird thing is outside of our time, like we are outside of the time of the movie, of the CD, or of the tape's timeline, our future already exists, but already here, not already here in our time. If we apply the concept of, and this is the key part, if we apply the concept of, wait a second, if there is an outside of the universe of our space-time, it means that our future already exists somewhere. If we apply this concept to our time, we are projecting the future into the present. Oh, sorry. But it's not. Relatively to an observer that lives outside of space-time, of our physical reality. However weird that timeless thing is, relatively to that hypothetical observer, the future is already written. But already written for its known time, not for our time. If we apply this concept as if it was our own time, we would be doing this. The future already exists, so we would be doing this. Taking the future, our future, and projecting it into our present. That's what we do when we are saying the future already exists because there is an outside of our time. But see, we are not outside of our time. We have just projected the future inside of our time, our present. So we are deceiving ourselves. And if we say, the same for the past, if we say, wait a second, if there exists something, however weird that thing is, outside of space-time, it means that as our future already exists, our past still exists. See? Past, present, and future. Past, present, and future. So our past still exists. But still for them. For those weird observers that live in that weird reality that is beyond space and time. Not for us. If we apply that concept to our time and we say, there is an outside of space-time, so our past still exists, and we apply this concept still to our time, we would be projecting our past not outside somewhere else, but inside of our present. The past still exists. But see, we are deceiving ourselves. If there is an outside of space-time, and there is necessarily, that's another topic, which is this: past, present, and future, the entirety of our time, yes, already exists, but here, in this timeless dimension, not here in any moment of time. Why? Because we are talking by definition about something that is outside of space-time, not inside. So the conclusion is that if there is, and most likely there is, an outside of our universe, of our story, similarly to how there is an outside universe that is beyond the little universe of the movie story, yes, our past, present, and future, they all exist organically together in that weird reality, so that they can say, if there is anybody living in a timeless reality, that our future already exists for them, not for us. And they can say that our past still exists for them, not for us. We live in space-time, which means that for us, we live in the present. For us, the past is gone, and the future hasn't come yet. For those, or for whatever, who live beyond space and time, in that weird timeless thing that triggered the beginning of time, then for them, in their non-time, in their fake time, our past, present, and our future already exists. Our past still exists. But already for them, not for us, still exists our past for them, not for us. So the conclusion, again, is, does the future already exist? It depends. If with already we mean already in for us, already in our time, then no. Because already is the present, is not the future. The future hasn't come yet. Does the past still exist? Again, it depends. If we are talking about for us, then no, the past is gone. We live in the present. But if we are talking about the timeless reality that is beyond space-time, the timeless reality that is, in question marks, outside of our universe, of our physical reality, of our space and time, then yes, for that non-time, our past are ready for them, not for us. Sorry, still for them, not for us, exists. In other words, because we live outside of the timeline of the movie on the tape or on the DVD, their past, their present, and their future already exist together as a whole for us, because we are not trapped into their time. Similarly, our past, our present, and our future all together exist in their entirety, but for them who are outside of our physical reality, our space-time. So for them, they are in some other timeless situation, condition, or context. They can say, if there is anybody, they can say that our space-time exists entirely as a whole, but not for us. But even if we understand this, because we are stubborn, our minds are so used to the linearity of time, past, present, and future, that even if we accept that, unintentionally, subconsciously, we are still projecting this concept in our time. Even if we say with our words, like verbally we say, oh, okay, so our past, our present, and our future already exist all together as a whole, but not in our time, but in that weird non-time of whatever it is, that strange timeless dimension that is beyond space and time. But we are saying this with words, and we are kind of understanding it with our rational minds, but subconsciously we are still thinking that the future already exists in our time, not outside of time. So subconsciously we are still thinking, wait a second, but if the future already exists, then we cannot change it. Our actions do not determine the future. No, we do. They do, because yes, our future already exists, but already not for us, already for a timeless dimension. It's a mystery. Of course, we cannot understand it fully, but not for our time. So how can we reinforce this concept to try to defeat the temporality of our minds that are so used to think temporally? We can reword it again in a further different way, and we could say that if we apply this concept, saying that if there is anything outside of space-time, however weird that reality is, because it doesn't even have time, so imagine how strange it is. The very fact that there is an outside makes our future already existing and our past still existing. If we consider already as our time, what we are doing, as we already saw, is we are projecting the future by saying the future already exists. Already. We are projecting it in our past. So let's pretend for a moment that we were right. Okay? The future already exists, but not already for a timeless reality that is beyond space and time. Not already for us. Okay? We are projecting the future in the present. The future already exists. See, it's not future anymore. It has become present. See, the future is gone. So again, even if we were right, saying that the future already exists for us, not for the timeless reality that is beyond space and time, still the future wouldn't be existing. We would still be wrong, even if we were right, by an absurdity. Because for the very fact that we are saying that the future already exists in the present, we transformed it. We turned the future into present. So it's not future anymore, so it's present. So again, the future doesn't exist yet for us. And the same for the past. If we say that because there is an external thing beyond time, the past already exists, but in saying, the past still exists, but in saying that the past still exists for us, we are projecting our past into the present. So we are saying that the past still exists now. Now is the present. So see, we projected the past into the present. So the past is not past anymore, it's present. So the past is gone. So either whether we say that the past is gone or we say the past still exists, if we think that it still exists now in our present, we turn the past into present, so we produce the same effect as if we were saying the past doesn't exist anymore. See, it's gone, it doesn't exist anymore. Only instead of having been destroyed, it has been turned into present. So either you destroy it or you turn it into present, still it ceased to be past. So still the past is gone, the future hasn't come yet. So the safe conclusion is to say that for us, or for whatever or whoever lives inside of space-time, every moment is the only time that exists. The past is gone and the future hasn't come yet. Because see, for whatever or whoever lives subjected to space-time, meaning inside of space-time, there's only the present. The past is gone. Do you see the past here? No. The future hasn't come yet. Do you see the future? No. But if we consider the container of time, that mysterious, timeless, because it has to be timeless necessarily. If I have time, speaking of which, I will make another video about that, but it's logical at least. The timeless container of time, the culprit of the triggering of time in the past, whenever time started, however long ago time started, long ago for us, because for the universe in its entirety, then it's even another different story, because time is not fixed, but it's flexible, but we are going off topic. So if we consider the timeless container of the time that triggered the beginning of time in the past, in the remote past of the universe, and that allows time to exist, then from that point of view, that is outside of time, for them, the past still, but still not for us, for a timeless dimension, the past, let's say, kind of still exists, the present kind of exists now, because they don't have a now, they don't have a past, they don't have a future, because there is no time, and the future kind of already exists here, which is timeless. And this reconciles the apparent contradiction that I mentioned in the beginning of the live. So it's all about reference frames, it's all about point of views. if we maintain our point of view in space-time, in the physical reality we live in, we inhabit in time, then the past is gone, the future hasn't come yet, because this is our point of view, our time, space-time, the universe, the physical reality, whereas the world, the particles, the atoms, the quarks exist. So if we consider this physical reality as our point of view, no, the past is gone. The future hasn't come yet. The future doesn't exist in the present, in our time, yet. Because even if it existed by an absurdity, it would exist now, which means it wouldn't be future, it would be present. So again, the future doesn't exist yet. The past doesn't exist anymore, because even if it still existed now, it would still exist in the present, so it wouldn't be past anymore, it would be present. So again, the past wouldn't exist anymore. If we consider space-time, our physical reality, as a universal point of view, if we consider as a point of view that weird, timeless thing that is beyond, I'm not saying outside, because outside implies space and time, but we are saying outside of space and time itself, so I prefer to say beyond instead of outside. If we consider as point of view that weird, timeless thing that exists beyond space and time, that doesn't have time at all, and that manages time, that allows time to start and to exist and to flow, then from that point of view, that is not our present, is neither the past nor the present nor the future, it isn't time at all, it's timeless. That's how it is possible that our time exists in its entirety. Our past kind of still exists because there isn't time there. Here, this container is timeless. Our present exists, and our future already exists because it's not time, it's timeless. Guys, I can't find a better way to explain this concept. I have it clear, but I am not able to explain it very clearly in words. I hope at least partially I did. And there was another thing I wanted to say before concluding this topic. I forgot, sorry. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed the topic. It's very interesting, very intriguing, and yeah, I forgot what I wanted to say. And if you have any questions, let me check the comments here on Facebook. Oh, hi Jose, you're talking about God. Yeah, of course, yeah, but that's, again, that's definitely part of the topic, but I will want to cover the topic of God another time. Speaking of which, God created the universe, time and space. Indeed, God is timeless. For those who believe in God, they know that God is timeless. So whether it's God, or if you don't want to believe in God, whatever you want, whatever it is, whatever caused time, for the very fact that allows time to flow, must necessarily be timeless. You don't want to call it God? Want to call it in another way? It's your choice, but it cannot be temporal. Otherwise, it wouldn't even be able to trigger the beginning of time and to keep allowing time to flow. Let's use a little analogy, a simple analogy. If you want to be able to allow, no, this is not good as an, sorry, I don't have an analogy at the moment. I hope that those that I used in the video are sufficient. And that's it. Do you guys have any questions? Or feel free to put here in the comment on Instagram. I don't think there's anybody actually right now on Instagram, or on Facebook if there is anybody. And I hope you enjoyed. And oh, I remember what I wanted to say, just to reinforce the concept of the fact that there must be necessarily beyond the universe, beyond space-time, there must be necessarily a timeless kind of container that isn't dimensional, hasn't any dimension, isn't temporal, isn't spatial, has no space and no time. Now we delve into physics, into known and proven physics. I am not a physicist, as I said. This is not a video about biology or biochemistry or dietetics or food science or microbiology, which are part of my profession, or IT, which is another profession of mine. So what I'm saying, I'm trying to express it to the best of my abilities, but a physicist would be more accurate and more able to explain it more clearly and more correctly. But what I'm telling to you, you can verify with your friends if you have any friend that is a physicist, or you can ask online. What I'm about to say now is proven physics. So it's proven physics, and by logical deduction, correct me guys if I'm wrong, proves what I said before, that there must necessarily be, even if it's outside of the scope of physical sciences, there necessarily must be a timeless and spaceless container that allows time to exist and flow, space and time to exist and be. So, what does physics say, knows already for sure that is connected to this topic? Well, physics has proven that time is not universally uniform and static. Time is very flexible, relative, and variable. This is one of the most astonishing things that physics gave us, and most intriguing, surprising, counterintuitive, and interesting. So, as I said before in the video, this pencil is not moving, relatively to me at least. This pad is moving. This notepad is moving, okay? Let's say it's rotating. So the pencil is still relatively to the notepad. Right now, even now is relative. The time that this pencil is living, is undergoing physically, is different from the time that this notepad is living. Time is flowing is flowing slightly faster for the pencil compared to the notepad. This is physics, guys. This is proven. It's sure. The satellites that right now are managing the internet, they have the equations of general relativity to adjust for the temporal difference because they are moving very fast relatively to computers on Earth. And before they added the equations in the system, they weren't synced because time is flowing at different speeds for those satellites compared to the computers on Earth. So, time is flowing at different speeds for this pencil and for this pad. Why? Because the pad is moving relatively to the pencil that is not moving relatively to the pad. Now that they are both still, now they exist in the same reference frame, physical reference frame. So now for them, because I am moving, so slightly differently, except my hands, let's say my head isn't in the same reference frame as them, but for them now pencil and notepad exist in the same reference frame, space-time, physical reference frame. Now they're not anymore again. So what does that tell us? And we will extend this concept to its astonishing implications. It's crazy. Time is flowing at a different speed for the notepad compared to the pencil. Okay? Which means that time on our planet, planet Earth, as a whole, time for me is flowing at the same speed as time for you, because we are both on the same planet, on the same reference frame. But if now I jump in a car and drive at 300 kilometers per hour, even at 1 kph, but let's say any speed, while you are sitting on your chair on the planet, our time becomes different. But let's extend this concept and see how astonishing it is. Now let's think about another planet that is moving at a slightly different speed compared to Earth. It's not perfectly synchronized to our speed, how we move, for example, relatively to the sun. Okay? Well, the time on Earth and time on that planet will be slightly different. But let's think about a planet in another galaxy. Let's say in the Andromeda galaxy. Because it's very distant, a small movement locally there, because the universe is expanding, compared to us, that planet is moving much faster away from us. It's difficult to explain, I'm sorry. If I was a physicist, I would have been able to explain it better, but you can trust this. It's physics. I'm just unable to explain it very clearly, but the concept is true. You can ask any physicist for a better explanation. The speed difference between us and that planet is huge. So we're not living in the same moment, in the same time, guys. It's crazy. It's nuts. So let's push this concept to the extreme, to the maximum extreme possible allowed by the known laws of physics. Where would that be? Where would that bring us? To the very edge of the light cone of our reference frame. And this is difficult to explain. So basically, everything in the universe, me, an atom, you, anything, any point in space, has a radius of slightly more than 300,000 kilometers, which is the distance that light could reach from, let's say, this point, okay, to any direction. So there is a sphere around this point in any moment in time that is the radius that a light ray could reach in any direction, starting from this point and moving away. That edge, beyond that edge, it's like a singularity. It's like at any moment in time, whatever is beyond that edge, in physics it's said it's causally disconnected from this point. It's as if doesn't even exist. So where is it? We can extend this concept to the entire observable universe. So we can observe the universe at great distances. But what we see with our telescopes, it's not, let's say we see the very edge of the observable universe, okay? We are not seeing how it is right now. We are seeing how it was tens of billions of years ago. I think, if I recall, that the radius of the observable universe is 90,000 billions of light years. Because that light started from there, those billions of years ago, and now it's reaching our eyes, our telescopes, lenses. So we are seeing now a light, a picture that was shot toward us billions of years ago. So by observing the extremities of the observable universe, scientists were able to find out, using physics techniques, redshift and other things, that the farther away we observe from any point in the universe, even if we were living in another galaxy, the observation point would change, but the result would be the same. From wherever we observe the surrounding universe, the farther we observe, the faster those bodies, stars, galaxies, galaxy clusters, etc., are moving away faster and faster and faster. The farther they are, the faster they are moving away from us. When we approach our observations to the physical limit of the observable universe, they are approaching the speed of light, which means that not by local motion, like relatively to something else that is closer to them over there, but relatively to us, because they are at the extreme distance of the observable universe, that relativity, which is the speed of light, basically, it's founded on the speed of light, allows us to observe, relatively to us, whatever reaches the very edge of the observable universe, that is not the edge of the existing universe, it's the edge of the observable universe, important distinction, whatever is right there at the edge, whatever is beyond, relatively to us, it's as if it's traveling, it's going away from us faster than the speed of light. But it's impossible. There's no such a thing, even if it's relative motion. So what does that mean? For sure there is something over there, but let's say that there are other people or animals or plants or even just stones or whatever on a planet, in a galaxy at that edge for us. They have their normal, relatively quiet life. They live on their planets, rotating around their stars, rotating in their solar systems, in whatever arm of whatever galaxy is there. They live their quiet life, ignoring us, okay? But relatively to us, whatever is beyond that edge, it's as though it doesn't even exist yet. Relatively to us, whatever is beyond that edge, physicists correct me if I'm wrong, it's as though they are at the point that was before even the beginning of time. They don't even exist yet. And so are we. We know that we exist. We are talking right now, but relatively to them, we don't exist yet. Because they are beyond the singularity for us. They are causally disconnected from this portion of the universe. And we so are, and so we are for them. See how dynamic and variable time is? So the universe is not just a line. The universe, it's a mess. I don't know how to explain. So, let's use another example. Let's say that there is a comet that is in a galaxy so distant from us that relatively to us is moving at 99.99% the speed of light. Very close to that limit, to that edge of the observable, of the light, of the observable universe, or the light cone. I don't remember which of the two is correct, but whatever it is, we ask to a physicist. So that comet is moving relatively to us, to our position here, to Earth, at 99.9% the speed of light. So relatively to us, its time is super dilated. When 1 second passes on that comet, here maybe 1 year, 2 years passed. I don't remember the equation, but there is a huge difference in time. And most of people now know that. That's just general relativity. We owe it to Einstein, mainly, but not only. But what less people know is that in reverse, it's the same thing. So, for them, if 1 second passes, for us, 1 year has passed. But for us, when 1 second passes here, 1 year has passed there. It's incredible. See how flexible and relative his time? So, if we consider the big picture of the implications of these, we can see that time varies as things move around. So right now these two things have exactly the same time flowing, but now that this is moving compared to this, time is flowing differently. See? Time is not universal. There is a mechanism, a scaffold that manages time as things interact with each other or do not interact with each other. There must be something. I don't know how to explain it, sorry, I tried my best. But what manages this? Okay, let's say that we have a pendulum, okay? Let's say that, let me take these things, okay, one, and where's the other? I have a bunch of them. When you need things, you never find them. There they are. 2, 3. Okay. Oh, this is broken. Doesn't matter. Okay. So now let's hang something on each of these things. Let's hang these here. Let's hang these here. And let's hang our famous pencil, if I can, here. Oops, no, we cannot hang it. I can just need to stretch it a little bit. Okay, so now this thing, let's use this as an analogy, representing the fact that time is not static and universal and identical for everything in the universe like it was taught hundreds of years ago. Well, with an exception. In the Catholic Church, since millennia, it is believed that in different places time flows differently. Only it wasn't applied to different regions of the physical universe, but it was applied to slightly farther regions. So it was believed that in purgatory time flows differently than from here. So when somebody dies, let's say right now this guy dies and he goes in purgatory, okay? 1 second has just passed here. He maybe lived already 1 year in purgatory. So with this exception, in the centuries in the past, it was always believed that the time is the same and everywhere and universal. But now we know it's not at all. So time is very variable and flexible and stretches and contracts, and it varies relatively to everything, relatively to everything else, and how things move relatively to each other. Whether we're talking about particles, atoms, molecules, bodies, planets, entire galaxies, and whatever, okay? So time is a mess in the universe. So everything has a different time if we dig deep down in the equations. Now, thank God, at a microscopic level, unless you approach the speed of light, these time differences are irrelevant. We cannot even perceive them. They are so minimal. They become tangible only when something approaches the speed of light. But there still is this difference, to the point that in some cases it is tangible, like it is for communication satellites. So this thing represents, an analogy of how messy time is in the universe. See, everything has a different time, moving differently relatively to each other, okay? But for the very fact, this is even fell beyond time. But for the very fact, this is not random. This responds to specific laws and respect these laws and these equations perfectly. It's messy, but it's also very ordered. But see, for this mechanism to exist, and let's pretend it's hanging there because it always falls, and to work, the whole universe, it's like a very complex and accurate machine, even temporally. See, they must all be obeying to this. There is a mechanism that manages time, and to be able to manage time, all these different parts and portions and regions, it must be universal. I don't know how to explain it, but otherwise everything will fall apart and will fall into chaos, while it's not. Everything is ordered. And we go back to the concept expressed in the first part of the video, the timeless container that holds space-time, which for us is past, present, and future. But for this timeless container, it's a whole blob, whatever. Okay, guys, sorry. I did my best to explain it. I'm not satisfied how I explained it. How I think I lacked clarity, but I hope you could. It was at least enjoyable to some extent, and I hope that you enjoyed it, and that you found the topic at least intriguing and interesting. And thank you so much for your patience and for watching. And if you get any solution that is more clear to this conundrum, I think the plural, it's a Latin, so conundri should be the plural. Let me know. Thank you. Have a happy Sunday, everybody. Bye. All the best. Thanks for watching.